Joining us now is Brigadier General Spalding. General, it is so great to have you back on the John Fredericks Radio Network, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
General, we got a lot to cover today. Let's first get to what's on the top of everybody's mind in foreign policy. President Trump's decision to not engage in Syria any further. Turkey is an ally. They're a member of NATO. Tough situation. Erdogan going forward with his offensive, and the president saying, look, we're simply not going to be involved in it. We're not going to certainly send any additional troops. He's coming under fire from the neocons and warmongers in Washington. That's my narrative, blasting him, saying that we're abandoning the Kurds. General, what say you?
Well, I think, first of all, you hear this all the time where people are complaining that we don't do something, or we do something and it's not, they're entirely focused on that one thing. And so there's an entire regional issue going on here. There's a global issue. The Turks are, sliding into the realm of being in the clutches of Russia and China. And they also act as a window into Europe from the Middle East. And then you have the global issue with China aiding Iran in creating chaos in the region. And so, I think there's a lot of things that the administration has to balance in terms of deciding, are we going to continue to be in Syria, a country where we went ostensibly to take care of ISIS, and ISIS has been taken care of. And the Kurds, quite frankly, are quite concerned about what's going on in their border, and they have a right to be. And so, you have to weigh all the factors that I just said and make a decision, and I think that's what the president did. And, we're entirely, the criticism that you talked about is entirely focused on just, the Turks and the Kurds when there's a lot more at play.
All right, so Brigadier General Spalding, if you were still advising the president and he were to call you in and say, what is your advice here in the Syrian situation? We have 150 troops there. They never should have been there in the first place, but they are. Here's what the Turks are telling me they're going to do. I've jawboned them out of it for 24 months. Now they're going to go forward. They're a NATO ally. I have a pretty good relationship with Erdogan, but I also don't want to see the slaughter of the Kurds. Nobody wants to see that, and they have been an ally of ours. General, what would be your advice to President Trump?
Yeah, I would say, look, the Kurds need to give the Turks some space, and you could offer them development help for their areas as a compensation for them moving back from those areas that the Turks are concerned about. And so, create a buffer zone between the two, and for that, help them develop. They are a stabilizing factor in that part of Iraq and Syria, and so we want them to be successful in developing. And I think that's where one of the ways that we could focus on helping them.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are with Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He's retired from the U.S. Air Force as a Brigadier General after more than a quarter century of service. Boy, General, that makes you sound old. He's a former China strategist for chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he's also the author of a best-selling book called Stealth War. I really recommend this. I don't recommend a lot of books, but I recommend the Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. And you can get that at your favorite bookstore, and hopefully we'll get that on our website if I remember it. Let me write that down, and that'll be another opportunity for you to buy that, for us to help you with that. General, as the Chinese, from the Chinese point of view, let's get to Hong Kong, and I want to get your take on the China's position there right now. It seems like the crowds have dissipated a little bit. Chinese have also been aggressive with their policing of the protest situation. Where did the Hong Kong protesters win? In fact, that they didn't get extradition. You think this is going to stay for a while? How do you think it plays out, General?
Yeah, I don't think the people of Hong Kong are going to stop. Quite frankly, they don't want to live under the Communist Party regime. They realize now that the Communist Party regime is not going to change on its own, and so one of the benefits that the Communist Party has is Hong Kong is a window to Western capital markets, and the people of Hong Kong realize that, and so they're forcing the Communist Party to make a decision. They're going to have to give up Hong Kong, or at least a special relationship that Hong Kong has with the West, if they want to, essentially oppress the people of Hong Kong. So, I think it's going to end badly because the Chinese Communist Party, quite frankly, doesn't want to give up control, and the people of Hong Kong aren't going to stop. And quite frankly, I can't blame them. The extradition treaties. Not just you're going to get extradited to China and maybe go to prison, because of the forced organ harvesting and other things that they have over there. It could be a death sentence, and so they just don't want to. They don't want to be under that brutal regime.
So, as many people are aware, a couple of days ago, the general manager of the Houston Rockets basketball franchise, Daryl Moore, and by the way, just not that it matters, but I've been a Rockets fan forever, so that's my team. I'm a Rockets fan. So the NBA franchise, the Rockets, since they had Yao Ming back in the day, have had a very lucrative financial arrangement with the Chinese Communist government. They go to China, they play a bunch of exhibition games, they get sponsored by Chinese companies that are all, obviously, that's all sanctioned by the government, so they get a lot of money that comes in. And their general manager's over there, and he tweets out something to the effect of, we stand with the freedom fighters of Hong Kong, or whatever he said. Backlash immediately. The owner made him delete the tweet, and now there's the NBA first made a feckless statement saying that, they're not political and they support everybody, and then they had to go back and say, well, the general manager does have his right to free speech. Now the Chinese communists have pulled their sponsorships away. And it really looks like the response from the NBA was really baloney. Because, imagine if it was the opposite, right? If it was the exact opposite, everybody would be backing the right to free speech, and you could blast the U.S. and everything else. And the NBA, basically in a feckless move, just crumbles because they're after the sponsorship money from the communists. What did you make of this whole thing, General?
Oh, well, the first thing I thought is, well, what a great advertisement for my book, because it basically perfectly demonstrates what I'm trying to say, which is, you don't need a ship or a tank or a plane to invade a democracy now. You can just use your economic and financial and informational, hooks, if you will, and put them into the country and then begin to squeeze. And that's what happened with the NBA. They got close to the Chinese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party said, well, you want your money, you're going to have to do what we say. And even worse, some of the players said, we apologize. Well, what they apologize for is essentially, a brutal regime that puts people in concentration camps and does all of these other things. So, it's hypocrisy at the highest.
Look, I'm a Rockets fan, and when that tweet came out, I applauded my general manager. It's like, man, somebody's got some balls, basically, to send this out. Now, obviously the owner went ballistic, sent out a rebuttal, made him take it down, and then had to say he was not going to get fired. How could you fire somebody over free speech? Of course he's not going to get fired. Plus, he's done an outstanding job of getting Westbrook. All right, I'm going to play a clip I want to get your reaction to, and then we're going to move on to Ukraine. Kara, let's get to cut 6 for General Spalding. Here's Jason Whitlock. He says the NBA is apologizing to a communist government while their coaches and players are railing against the U.S. government. Cut 6, Whitlock.
Well, Tucker, the cultural impact of this and what a great teachable moment it is for most American citizens. When people start talking about being a global citizen, I don't think people really understand what that means for American culture. And I think for a lot of the everyday typical American sports fan, this is an educational experience. This is what people have been talking about. We can't let our corporations, our country being totally driven by China because it's driving our culture. These basketball players, LeBron James, James Harden actually apologized on behalf of Daryl Morey to the Chinese government. We're apologizing to a communist government, and then we have athletes here and coaches like Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich that rail against our government. We're the bad guys in the minds of these NBA players and coaches and their little parade of being so woke. All of it, to me, is at the behest of the shoe companies. They're doing the bidding of the shoe companies and protecting China and demonizing us and our culture and dramatically changing our culture because these athletes are young. And I'm not giving them an excuse, but they're young.
Right.
Many of them didn't go to college or only spent a year or two in college. They don't understand how they're being used and played to promote a communist, a Marxist agenda. They have no idea that their actions and a lot of the things they're promoting, this victim mentality and all the identity politics and, everything in America is racist, all of that. It's all a scam by the shoe companies. Look how socially aware we are. Look how we fight against injustice. No, you're actually doing a marketing ploy to pretend you have a social conscience, and you're actually doing the bidding of the communist regime in China.
Yeah.
Okay, that is, like you said, that is an advertisement for General Spalding's book, The Stealth War, by Brigadier General Robert Spalding. You can get it in Amazon or your favorite bookstore. How do you react to that, General?
Well, I mean, when I talk to young officers today, one of the things that you realize is there's a lot of ignorance just in terms of what the Constitution says. Like, people aren't aware that, for example, in the federal government, in the executive branch, the president is the chief law enforcement officer, the chief diplomat, the commander-in-chief of the military forces. And there's this belief that, these unelected officials within the government are responsible to the American people. There's only one person responsible to the American people, and that's the president. But I mean, even people that ought to know that raise their right hand to support and defend the Constitution don't understand what kind of government we have. And so, it's a problem that we have in this country. Not just that we don't understand the nature of the Chinese Communist Party, we don't actually understand the nature of our own government.
General Spalding, the whole thing is, like you said, it is exactly what is in your book, how we've been bamboozled, and it's a case study in how the Chinese, through corporations and money and sponsorships and other things that they do, have basically captured a segment here of public policy. And look, I love James Harden. I'm a big Harden fan. I'm a Rockets fan. I hate Steve Kerr. I hate Popovich. So does my wife. We hate the Warriors. We hate the Spurs. They're the enemy. But that tweet that the general manager sent out, I think, is going to go down in history as a game changer. So we'll see what plays out. General, I got about 4 more minutes. I want to get your take on the Ukrainian development, the transcript. I know you had a chance to read that. Now we have the impeachment inquiry, the White House firing back. They're not going to participate. When you look at the administration's involvement on that Ukrainian phone call and you read the president's transcript, when you looked at that and digested it, if you were on that call, did you see anything that rises to the level of impeachment or wrongdoing? And why or why not?
No, I didn't, and because I don't think there was any implied quid pro quo, and the president really didn't, essentially offer anything. He said, "Hey, can you work with the attorney general," which is entirely appropriate for a president to do. More importantly, as you look at the whistleblower complaint, as you read that in full, you realize that there might be a violation here of the Hatch Act, because it appears to be a partisan effort to use the whistleblower system, to essentially, and it was because there was a meeting between the whistleblower and Representative Schiff's staff prior to, and actually the staff advised the whistleblower to file the whistleblower complaint. It appears that there was a partisan act, so that would have been using government resources to conduct a partisan act to submit the whistleblower statement. So, I looked at this, and I really, it's part of the entire kind of political scene that's going on here in D.C., which is really doesn't make any sense, and that's why, quite frankly, I just try to ignore it.
What did you think of the administration firing back with a letter last night, General Spalding saying, look, we're done participating. Either you're going to have a vote and have a legitimate hearing or not. Other than that, we're done. What did you think of that?
Well, I think it belies exactly what's going on, which is it's an entire theater. It's a show. The whole thing's a show.
All right, Brigadier General Robert Spalding. General, always great to have your insight. Go buy his book, Stealth War. This whole segment basically ties in to what the general has laid out in his book, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. And this is, if you really want to understand China, you have to read this book. Just like I've always said, you have to read Peter Navarro's book, which is a classic of all time, China, Death by a Thousand Cuts. Great book. These are two of them. They need to be side by side. General Robert Spalding, thanks for being with us. Stealth War, get it at your favorite bookstore or Amazon or wherever you want. And I tell you what I'm going to do, General. I'm going to put it right on our website, so that people can just click on it and buy it there. That's because I really think you've done some outstanding work here. Thanks for being with us, sir.
Thanks so much.